Hey there. I'm out here whittling. Purposeful whittling. And one reason I'm doing it is, one, is fun, and the other is that I've been personally challenged, not called out in a challenge, but personally challenged in watching some of Mark Hudson's videos about primitive traps and things, and you know, I want to give a mention to Mark and say thanks for getting me going again in that regard. It's been a long time since I've practiced this particular skill, and it's good to be back doing it. It's personally gratifying to use your hands and a couple of tools and the resources around you to create something that can, in a pinch, honestly save your life. Now, this particular trigger that I've worked on this morning again is something of a modified figure 4 trigger that uses a spring pole mechanism to drive it and make it work. And basically it's made from 3 sticks of varying lengths. I don't know, this one that goes in the ground is probably close to 18 or 20 inches, and the bait stick itself is maybe close to 24, and then the trigger itself is 6 or 7 inches long. And I cut these out of a piece of gallberry that I walked out in the woods and cut this morning, and it's basically a 7 notch, a square notch, another square notch, another 7 notch, and then a couple of 45-degree. One's a 45 and the other one is different, in order to make the thing work. And one of the things when you're setting these up is sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get all of the parts working like they should under pressure. It's not that you've done a bad job making things, but when that spring pole is pulling up on this, the only thing that's holding it together is the upward pressure, the tension on that trigger. And a lot of times, if the spring pole is a little one side or the other, it'll twist and it'll fire on its own. Now, let me mention too that when you're playing with these, when you're working with these and practicing with any kind of loaded trap, not necessarily baited, but loaded and under pressure, keep your face away from anything. Don't get over it when you're turning it loose, and stay away from things that can poke your eye out or cause some other type of injury or discomfort. When I first started playing with these, practicing with these, I took a pretty good lick under the chin by a sapling, a good sized sapling that I was using as a spring pole, and I was up over it, and the thing turned loose on its own, and it cocked me real good right under the chin. That smarted, and I'm glad that that's all it did was smarted. And so let's take these sticks and set them up in an improvised mock-up setup just to see how they work. Before we do that, the tools that I used in making it were a Baco Laplander and my little Condor woodlaw that my son-in-law made for me for Christmas a few years ago. and the number 18 tarred bank line. I'll say something else about the bank line a little bit later, but I want to show you a good way to make the snare on the end of a piece of cordage, especially bank line. And I've got to admit that this is not my idea. I didn't figure this out on my own, and I've got to give credit to where credit is due. Years ago I was watching a Dave Canterbury video, and this is a little trick that I picked up from him. And if I can get my little knot untied here. It's a great little trick that works really well. Now, hope you can see this. In the end of your cordage, what you want to do is make a loop and simply tie an overhand knot in the end where you've got a small loop on the end. Now, once you've got that, you can open it up, butterfly it, and pull your cordage through what you've done. And then you've got a snare loop on the end. And one of the great things about this is that when it tightens up, this one isn't working so well, but if the loop were smaller, make the loop as small as you can make it for it to be functional. But the smaller the loop, the less likelihood this cordage has of loosening up, and that's a plus in a situation where you've caught an animal on a snare made from cordage that doesn't have any other kind of locking mechanism. Let's set this up and see how it works. So I've got this thing set up, and this is how it's supposed to work. Now, in a real situation where you're setting some type of trap, especially this type of snaring trap, in order to procure something to put in your stomach, this has to be concealed. You have to build up around it some type of barricades on both sides and in the back. Maybe just lightly, just some twigs on the top. You don't want to do anything that's going to interfere with the way the mechanism is supposed to work. And the objective is old critter. Now, I'm of the opinion that the two best survival meats in the woods in a survival situation are raccoons and possums, simply because they both have a very high fat content, and we need fat. That's very important. We can starve to death eating lean meats like deer and squirrel and rabbit. But we need those fats, and in a survival situation, focus on those fattier small animals that will give you protein, will give you fat, and then you can supplement that part of your diet with starchy stuff that you can find in the way of certain types of roots and things like that that have a high starch content. Now, say old possum comes along. Oh, one other thing. Now, in my kit and in Shirley's kit, there are a dozen 18-inch, 100-pound test stainless steel fishing leaders. Now, those are great little snares that can be made in a hurry simply by attaching to make a loop and attach your cordage. And in this particular case, I'm just using some number 18 tarred bank line that I picked up at the fishing place down south. And the thing about it, You probably won't have any trouble with a possum chewing its way out of a snare, maybe, but your chances of one doing that are a lot less than a raccoon chewing its way out. They're going to get out of whatever they're in, a raccoon is. That stainless steel fishing leader gives you a little bit more advantage because your cordage that's easily chewed is up higher, and it has a more difficult time getting a grip on that to chew on it. So here your critter comes along and you've got bait either tied onto the end of the bait stick, or I like to create some barbs on that bait stick so it's harder to pull off. And the critter comes along, he's going to get that bait. He sees that bait, he smells that bait, he wants that bait, and he's caught. That's the way that's supposed to work. Catches it around his neck, and the improvised spring pole. The thing about what I've got set up here, a lot of times in the woods you find a game trail where something is walking, and you see coon tracks or possum tracks or whatever small tracks, and you look around trying to find an ideal place to make a set that uses a spring pole as the engine to drive the mechanism, and they're not always available, but you can easily improvise a spring pole. Here I've got it just propped up in my rack here, my sawbuck, and it's easy to improvise a spring pole just about anywhere on a trail as long as you've got some place to attach it, and it'll work just fine that way. I appreciate you watching the video. I appreciate you subscribing to our channel, and we'll see you on the next one.